All right, we have a few big cards this weekend. Primarily the Canelo versus Khan card, the Anthony Crolla versus Ismael Barroso card, as well as the Kubrat Pulev versus Derek Chisora card, which is an IBF heavyweight eliminator. Of course, winner becomes the mandatory. I believe it becomes mandatory unless there's another eliminator and they do the final eliminator. Anyway, winner would be in line for a potential shot at either um, Anthony Joshua or Dominic Brazil should he pull off the big upset. But there's a few fights and a couple cards coming up this weekend that I wanted to shed some light on, give a little bit of shine to. First off, in Las Vegas on Friday on Estrella TV as well as RingTVLive.com. Live streams right there on RingTVLive.com, and also immediately after they're finished live streaming, it's cached on the website, so you can immediately watch it right after immediate playback. I mean, they don't have any upload time process or anything. It's right there for you to watch all over again. Um, Main event is Marvin Quintero versus Peter Petrov, two lightweight contenders. Some of you guys may remember Quintero for having a close fight with Miguel Vasquez back when Vasquez was still lightweight champion, as well as having a bit of a heartbreaking loss to Rustam Nugaev. Wound up fracturing his hand really badly and retiring on the stool. And a fight that was actually pretty even that he was winning up until that point, I thought. Peter Petrov, you guys will probably remember from winning the Boxino tournament, the lightweight Boxino tournament that ESPN had a little over a year ago. And then, of course, he more recently defeated Gamaliel Diaz, perennial contender Gamaliel Diaz, in a somewhat of a tough fight early on. He got dropped in the first round. Eventually came back, dropped Diaz in the 7th round, but overall won a pretty dominant decision over Diaz. This is a pretty good fight. Very evenly matched fight. I think it's definitely one to watch. I mean, just as far as a fun fight goes, and the winner could potentially be in line for a title shot at lightweight. Peter Petrov is a strong pressure fighter, a little bit of a mini Provodnikov type style. Although I think he sets up a little bit better than Provodnikov, although not quite as much power, not quite as much thudding concussive force. Marvin Quintero is southpaw, somewhat slick, although he tends to try to use his quickness for power rather than evasiveness. So he's got pretty fast hands, fast feet, and he's looking to try to explode and just take you out with snappy shots. So I think this is a good fight, just an excellent fight to watch and be entertained by. As well as on the undercard of that, the co-feature is going to be Pablo Cesar Cano versus Alan Sanchez. Alan Sanchez is a bit of a rising welterweight prospect to a certain degree. His only loss was to Luis Collazo a few years ago. Collazo, of course, the crafty old vet, managed to overcome the hungry young lion in Alan Sanchez. Alan Sanchez is a very tall welterweight. He's 6'1". He's a good fighter though. Pablo Cesar Cano, of course, you guys remember from his fights with Eric Morales, Johan Perez, Paulie Malignaggi, Shane Mosley. He lost the Malignaggi and the Mosley fights as well as the Morales fight. The Malignaggi one, of course, was very controversial split decision loss. The Mosley and the Morales fights were a bit more clear for Mosley and Morales. And then, of course, he recently had another loss to Fernando Angulo. And that was just what was his name? Was his name Fernando Angulo? Yeah, I think it was something Angulo. I have a feeling like it was another dude named Fernando Angulo. Different guy though, not the not El Perro Angulo. Anyway, Pablo Cesar Cano versus Alan Sanchez. Good welterweight type crossroads-ish fight. Cano's a little bit of a vet now, even though he's only 26. Sanchez is still a rising prospect. They're about the same age. But solid fight again. Good matchup. Good, pretty evenly matched type of a fight. And that's pretty much Friday right there. Then on Saturday, along with the Canelo and then the cards in Europe, in Germany, and the UK, there's a card in Namibia. In Namibia, of course, that's in West Africa. Fighter from Namibia, Paulus Ambunda, is challenging actually for a title. The champion is actually going over to the challenger's hometown. This being Moises Flores. Moises Flores, the WBA interim super bantamweight champion, is shooting over, jet setting out to Windhoek, Namibia, to fight Paulus Ambunda, trying to defend his title. Paulus Ambunda had a recent loss, and his only loss to Tomoki Kamada, a couple years back, before Carmona managed to make his United States debut, defeated Paulus Ambunda over in the Philippines, in the Philippine card, interestingly enough. Defeated him for the WBO bantamweight title at the time. Beat him by unanimous decision. It was a pretty competitive, albeit a clear decision for Carmona. So Paulus Ambunda is a pretty strong contender, and Moises Flores is probably one of the top rising fighters at 122 pounds. It's kind of funny to call him a rising fighter considering he already has a title. I know a lot of people really aren't familiar with Moises Flores though. Moises Flores had a couple of good recent fights. He had his title victory over Oscar Escandon at 122 pounds, where I mean it was just a great fight back and forth and threw a lot of punches. Moises Flores is a very tall fighter for super bantamweight, a 5'9" guy, but he throws punches and bunches. A very high volume fighter. You know, he's comes from the Diego Corrales and Paul Williams type school of, you know, just flood you with volume punches and, you know, leverage on those punches because he's so tall. And he also had a recent fight with Luis Cusolito rather. Defeated him by a 12th round TKO in a fight where I think Moises Flores averaged over 100 punches a round. So this is a high volume fighter and is just a very intense, fast paced type of a guy. He's a bit of a switch hitter. He'll go orthodox or southpaw on you. Throws punches and bunches from either stance, every angle. He's a fun fighter to watch. And so this fight, hopefully it'll get uploaded fairly quickly so I can share it with y'all. But just a solid fight. Flores is always fun to watch. And the winner of this fight, well, I mean, aside from the winner of this fight, but the WBA had already ordered that Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Moises Flores get made by, I think it was September, if I remember correctly. I made a video on it. And whoever either backs down from the fight, if it doesn't get made and they don't go to purse bids or anything, one of them is going to wind up getting stripped because the WBA is trying to, of course, unify their titles at every weight class. Frampton is gone. He already dropped his. So you can have the super champion in Rigo and the interim champion in Moises Flores. So as long as Flores wins this fight here, or if Ambunda wins it, Rigo will be ordered to fight the winner by, I believe, I think it was September or October, somewhere in there. But they'll have to either come to an agreement or go to purse bids, and then at that point, you know, it'll be settled either in the ring or, you know, whoever, well, just however way it happens. But it'll get ordered, so at least we'll get some traction with regard to the whole situation at 122 following this fight. So this is a pretty important fight as far as that goes. As well as in Tokyo, Japan, on Saturday, there's Takashi Miura's return, fighting against Jonel Gadapan. This is I guess I don't know if it's a stay busy fight or if he's planning on competing at lightweight from here on out, but this is listed as a lightweight bout. So this is basically Miura's return after being defeated by Francisco Vargas, and you know, funny enough, considering the recent controversy of Vargas testing positive for clenbuterol and the pre-fight VADA testing for Solis. Solis. Why did I say Solis? Salido. Orlando Salido. I'm mixing up Orlando Salido and Odlanir Solis. No, his recent pre-fight VADA testing with Odlanir Salido. Odlanir. See, now I'm fucking it up even more. Orlando Salido. And so Miura is fighting Jonel Gadapan, fighter from the Philippines, a guy who really is overmatched. Miura should be able to handle him pretty easily in spite of the fact that he hasn't really fought at lightweight. You know, he's been fighting all this time at super featherweight defending his title. But, you know, should be fairly easy work for Miura, and hopefully he'll get a title shot, you know, right after this fight. Then, as well as Miura on Saturday, or actually rather going into Sunday on May 8th, you have the Bounce TV card, which is, you know, pretty much a bunch of prospects and, you know, rising contenders. Chief amongst them is Kanat Islam and Miguel Cruz, the two main fights on there. But there's also another card from Tokyo featuring Naoya Inoue versus David Carmona. This is Inoue's mandatory challenger for his WBO super flyweight belt. Inoue, of course, defeated his last mandatory, Orlito Perenas, in 2 rounds after initially winning the title off of Omar Narvaez in 2 rounds. So be interesting to see if he winds up knocking out David Carmona in 2 rounds as well. Carmona had actually had a draw with Perenas before Perenas wound up fighting against Inoue for the title. But this is a mandatory for Inoue, And unfortunately, Inoue also has a mandated rematch that was in the contract with Omar Narvaez. So it looks like he's going to be tied up with that fight in the meantime, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of fighters looking to move up to 115 in the near future. Primarily, Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, Juan Francisco Estrada, and then the next guy I'm going to be mentioning, who's fighting on this card, Akira Yaegashi, who's going to be defending his IBF light flyweight 108-pound title against Martin Tecuapetla. And it's Martin is going to be a tough opponent for Yaegashi. Yaegashi should be able to come through against Tecuapetla, and otherwise, as long as he does, Yaegashi's plans were to try to jump over 112 pounds and go up to 115 and try to win a world title in his fourth weight class. The only problem with that being the fact that it seems like 115 is really flooded with a lot of mandatories and like immediate rematches and stuff like that. The WBC champion Carlos Cuadras has a mandatory Sisakit or Rongvisai. They haven't mandated that he fight him immediately though. Same thing with WBA. You have the super champion Kohei Cano and the interim champion Luis Concepcion, who either they or whoever defeats them will be having to fight probably before next year. The IBF champion Miguel Arroyo is pending litigation with Duran Ancajas unless they manage to reschedule that fight, because Ancajas was the winner of the first bid, being the mandatory for Arroyo. And then, of course, as I mentioned previously, Naoya Inoue is tied up with this fight against David Carmona and then his mandated contractual rematch with Omar Narvaez. But Yaegashi, should he win this fight, even if he stays at light flyweight, there's plenty of great fights out there for him. You have Kosei Tanaka moving up, and then several other fighters. Potentially even maybe a unification with Ryuichi Taguchi, which would be an excellent fight. But yeah, it'd be great to see Yaegashi pull through that and try to win a world title in his fourth weight class. It'd be pretty funny if he was able to actually pull that off before Roman Gonzalez does it, rather, considering that Gonzalez, of course, TKO'd Yaegashi for the title that Gonzalez currently holds, the WBC flyweight title. And then as well on that card, you have Naoya Inoue's little brother Takuma Inoue finally stepping up into a 12-rounder, and then rising prospect from at bantamweight Ryo Matsumoto. So some pretty good fights this weekend outside of the big time, big name and easily accessible TV fights. The ones that really to look out for, I'd say the Naoya Inoue Carmona fight should be a quick, fun one. Yaegashi Tecuapetla should be a fun fight, and then let me see. And then as I mentioned previously, the fight between Quintero and Petrov is, to me, I think that has action fight written all over it, and probably the same with Cano versus Sanchez. Those are pretty good action fights between fringe contender level type guys at lightweights and welterweight. And then otherwise you have Moises Flores at super bantamweight. Jet setting around the world, showing what it really means to be a world champion, and actually defending his title around the world. It's pretty cool to see that. I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more fighters be able to do that. Of course, as long as the money's right. If somebody's putting up big cash, and it's pretty cool to see Ambunda's team, whoever they may be, putting up the big money to get them over there and have them fight out there. So some good fights to catch this weekend. I'm going to try and do my post-fight reviews on them as soon as I see them, and then as soon as they get uploaded either to YouTube or to Daily Motion. I'm going to try and put them in the description as I normally do. But some solid fights coming up here. And some, which may have big implications for the near future, especially at super bantamweight and super flyweight, two divisions that are quickly heating up as far as I'm concerned. A lot of guys on the rise and potential contenders that can knock off the big names out there. So that's it for this one. I'll catch you guys on the next.